Hello, and welcome to a discussion on rhythm and duration and related concepts. If a term is underlined, or when the musical notes are pictured and we have some discussion or description of them, please add those things to your notes. So, rhythm and duration and related concepts, most of these things are sort of interlocked. Like it's hard to discuss rhythm without understanding what duration is. So there'll be a few key things here to go through with you. And my first comment is generally when I'm working with students and introducing this lesson, many of them feel confident that they're familiar with the term rhythm and they have an idea of what it is. Few of them can express anything more than saying, well, it has to do with the beat. So I'm going to just dive right in with a definition for you. Rhythm, Rhythm. It's tricky to spell if you're not paying attention, but rhythm refers to the patterns surrounding the beat in music. So the beat is involved, but we're actually talking about the patterns around that. So, I'm tapping on the table now. And if we're supposed to sing something that has a rhythm like this, right? It's not just the beat. There's a pattern involved there. So our definition for rhythm will be patterns surrounding the beat in music. So here's a little sample. This is actually the rhythm that I just now tapped out. Where the red X's, where you see those, that's where you feel the pulse in this particular song. So if our pulse is like this, we don't just have, boys and girls of Ev, right? We're not just on the beat, but we have these rhythms that surround the beat. Boys and girls of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange? And learning which note means what as far as how quickly you move through them, that is part of the picture when it comes to figuring out rhythms. Now, an important concept that is related and sort of governs how quickly all these rhythms go and how quickly the music goes is tempo. And that refers to how fast or slow the music is. And that's measured in beats per minute. Now, throughout this discussion, if there's a point where I move screens too quickly and you need a minute to jot it down, feel free to pause the video or back it up a little bit and make sure that you get everything that I don't want you missing anything. So tempo is how fast or slow the music is, and that's measured in beats per minute. And here's a little picture of the start of this song. Tempo generally is indicated at the beginning of just about any song that you're going to do. Often they'll use a descriptive word like moderately. Sometimes instead of giving you numbers, they'll just put like a tempo word there, like presto or allegro or andante. So there's a whole list of terms, and they're all from the Italian language, and they describe certain parameters of tempo. A lot of times in current music, though, you'll see something like this where they'll suggest a number. And remember, we're talking beats per minute. So this says make your quarter note at 84 beats per minute, and that's the right speed for this song to go. So I would use a metronome to help me set up that tempo. Okay? Duration. That refers to how long a note or rest should last. That's how you get to know, do I sing these words quickly or do I sustain this syllable longer? And duration is really the key to figuring out that puzzle. Syncopation is when you have an offbeat rhythm. Several of the tunes I'm working on with my students right now that they're developing have a lot of syncopated rhythms in there, where things fall in between the beats. And you probably don't think about it a lot. I mean, most of us are accustomed to syncopated music being around us all the time. If there's a beat and then da, 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 has that in between beat feeling to it. It can be tricky to read, and it can be tricky to establish in a piece that is new to you. but syncopation is a really cool element of being able to read rhythms. So here's just a little excerpt that I took a picture of it. It was on my smartboard, and we were discussing a few things that we should have awareness of while we're talking about figuring out rhythms. You got to be aware of where your bar lines are falling, right? The bar lines separate the music into measures. So each of these, like the space in here is a measure, this is a measure, this is a measure. And these are governed by the time signature. This particular one says 4 counts per measure, and the quarter note gets 1 count, or 4. Sometimes I use the word counts instead of beats. I'll phrase it the other way. 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. So those 4 beats would happen right here. Even though that's a quarter rest, it still gets a beat. So boom, 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 boom. And then when you have eighths, you have to subdivide it because there's a beat here and a beat here, like we saw in that earlier example. So da, 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 and the rest. Then sometimes you have a note that lasts longer, like this half note. And so he would be like da, 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 rest, rest. And that's how those would line up with the beats. But you have to have an awareness while we're doing this of where the bar lines are, and that each measure in between them should match up with what's in the time signature. Really important to know as you're figuring out the rhythms in a piece of music. So to get started on learning the notes, we're going to be working on a 4/4 time signature like the one that I just showed you. And that means that there's 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. Here's an example, again, where you would see a time signature in the music, 4/4. 4 beats per measure, quarter note gets the beat. Eighth notes are half as long as a quarter note, so I can actually fit 8 of those in there. We'll get there. All right, so here we go with the actual notes. Let's start with the longest one. This is the whole note and the whole rest. These have a duration of 4 beats in 4/4 time. Here's the note. So you're singing a note or playing a note and sustaining it for 4 beats. This is a rest, which means silence for 4 beats. That's what the rest looks like in the staff. But if I'm just, hand drawing it outside of the staff, it would look like that. The point is that this one goes below the line. Again, pause this as you need to keep up with it. This is the whole note. The half note and rest are half as long as the whole note. Notice that the stem can be drawn going up or going down. Notice the position of the stem when the note head is up or down. That is really critical. Nothing will point you out as an amateur right away than if you have the stem on the wrong side of the note or down the middle from it. And generally, stems are there's 2 laws that govern the way the stems go. Whether it's up or down is really irrelevant. They're still the same note. Usually they're going to be grouped in a way that makes sense for your eye to read them more quickly. So the position in the staff, if it's higher in the staff, it'll probably be drawn this way. If it's lower in the staff, it'll probably be drawn this way. A second rule to that would be, for instance, if soprano and alto are drawn in the same staff or system, I should say staff if they're in the same staff and sharing a staff, then sometimes what they'll do is they'll say soprano is the tune where the note head, the stems are going up, and alto sings where the note stems go down. So, you'd have a note with a stem down and a note with a stem up, and then that helps you figure out who's singing which note. Half rest looks a lot like the whole rest, but it goes up from the line. Here's what it looks like in the staff. All right. Half as long as a half a note is the quarter note. Check your spelling, please. It's a very common mistake to skip this letter R here, but then you'd have a quater note, and that just doesn't make sense. So quarter note and quarter rest. Again, the stem could go up or down. In this instance, the note head is filled in, so that's visually different than what we had with the half note, quarter rest. This is the one that I copied like directly out of a printed score. This is what it looks like when I hand draw it. If you're saying that this isn't precisely the same, you are correct. That is my best, quick representation of it. So if we're doing an assignment and it looks like, I don't know, a scraggly 3 that got hit by lightning, that's my quarter rest. It's the best that I can draw it. The 8th note is half as long as the quarter note, so it gets a duration of a half a beat in 4/4 time. It looks a lot like the quarter note, but we've added this little flag here. Now, if I've got 2 8th notes, I can group them. In fact, I can group 4, I can group 8, and that all has to do with how it appears in the measure. That can make your eye understand it more quickly if they're grouped according to the pulse and the time signature. All right, 8th rest, it kind of looks like a strange number 7, a little bit thicker here, a little swoop up, and then stem that comes down. So there's another note to go through, and it's half as long as an 8th note. And if you're good at math, you probably guessed that it's a 16th note. It has a duration of a quarter beat in 4/4 time. And this sounds really complicated, but once we get to reading rhythms, you'll understand how that makes sense. That just means that if you've got a beat here, you could fit like these 4 in one beat. Right, getting along with the pulse there. So while it sounds complicated to say it lasts for a quarter beat, in practice, it's not that bad to figure out. The 16th note looks a lot like the 8th note. It's got a second flag added. When you group them, you have 2 bars of grouping. And this looks a lot like the 8th rest. It's just got this little second thing here. So it's kind of just a little more fancy. It's like the 8th note, but with double everything. Here's a little picture of some of the music that I'm working on with students right now. And I used the term system earlier. System means like this whole set here that is held together with this little straight line. This entire system of music goes across like this and all happens at the same time. So the piano in the lower part has quarter notes. Boom, 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 boom. So each one lasting for a beat. The piano in the treble clef, the right hand, has so if I'm tapping my beat, boom, 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 and then the vocalist, the actual singing that happens here, this is a beat, this is a beat, and we're in that 4/4 time signature. So like here's a quarter note. That's pretty easy. That takes up a beat of time. Here's another beat. So you can see there's 4 beats worth of notes added in here. 2 16ths and an 8th. Isn't this fancy, grouping them like this? Good for you to get a visual on that. So if I'm tapping my beat and then, wouldn't you like to see something strange? Come with us and you will see. It's quarter note, 8th, 8th, some 16ths, and you can kind of see how they fit together there. This is the slide that I usually have on the board when we're doing the lecture in class, and it just kind of has all of the notes together. Your whole note and whole rest, duration of 4 beats. Half note and half rest, duration of 2 beats. Quarter note, quarter rest, duration of 1 beat. Now you can definitely see like the de-evolution here. So I'm trying to sketch these out quickly. Textbook, if I take my time, if I'm in a hurry. 8th notes down at the bottom, got the flag, and they each get half. They last for half a beat. And here we go. Now you can see the bottom there. This is what the eighth notes look like grouped, 4 of them. And then down below, the 16th notes, like we've talked about. Interestingly, the tune that I shared those little excerpts from, the Halloween music, actually has 30-second notes in it. So, you can go from the whole note to the half note to the quarter and to the eighth. And each time you do that, the note is half as long, right? So if you go from 16th to eighth, the eighth is twice as long. Quarter is twice as long as that. Half is twice as long as that. So each time you go from a whole note on down, you're cutting the duration in half. So 16th notes, you can fit 4 of those against one beat. 30-second notes, you could technically fit 8 of them against one beat. So I don't see that a whole lot, but some of the text in that Halloween song has to move really quickly. Okay, so that's a basic introduction to the name of each note and what they function like in 4/4 time, and the discussion about rhythm and duration. So this part, when we're talking about how long they each last, how many beats, that's really the duration part of it. Now, there is one last thing to point out to you that you're going to see when you're reading music, and this little mark, it can be assigned to any note. You can do it on a whole note, a half note, even an eighth note. Any note could have this, and it is the dot. And when you have the note is dotted, that adds 1/2 of the original note's duration. So let's discuss that with the half note first. That's the easiest one, I think, to understand. Half note is worth 2. And then if you add half of 2, that's 1. 2 plus 1 is 3. So now this note is worth 3 because it's got the dot. Whole note is normally worth 4. Half of 4 is 2. So this note with a dot now would last for 6. You couldn't have that in 4/4 time, but you could have it in 6/4. You could have it in 8/4. There's other time signatures where you could have it, but just know that your whole note could be dotted. If you dot your quarter note gets 1 beat in 4/4 time, and so the dot would be a half. So yes, really, 1.5 beats. It's another one of those things where conceptually it's like, that's confusing. How can I have a beat and a half? Or if you have a dotted eighth note and it gets 3/4 of a beat, right? Then we're like into some sort of math warped existence in music, but don't let it throw you. You just got to get the feel for how they fit against the beat. Okay. Hopefully this discussion was helpful. If you're one of my students where this was an assignment for you to take notes, you should have anything that was underlined and discussed should be in your notes, and I will ask you to take a picture of those notes and upload that as evidence of having gone through the discussion. Okay? Thank you very much.